Sandra, what a pleasure to be here with you again. This is something that we have started not long ago, but I find very, very helpful. And most importantly, it brings a lot of peace and insights to me and to the people that we're talking to. Today, I was thinking what to talk about, and I was intrigued to see how people let other people control their lives, how that impact, influence, and kills their rhythm in business, their performance, the self-esteem, and how that alone is so easy yet so complicated to solve in so many ways, right? What I mean by that is the boundaries, the limits that we put in our lives, right? So, a lot of people, have you seen that in how set up boundaries is so important? How can you improve or become immune of the lack of boundary illness?
Love that you just said, how do you become immune to the lack of boundary illness? Because it is that exactly. So, you know that I am certified divorce coach and that I am now getting certified on mastery divorce coach and emotional trauma and domestic abuse. And one of the lessons is boundaries. And so important to learn to build boundaries. I mean, sometimes, well, most of the times when we suffer emotional abuse and when we have trauma, most of the times, 99% of the times, it was not created by us. However, we have the immense gift to stop it with boundaries. So boundaries are not for others. That's super important to point out. Boundaries are for us. And the day that I learned that, it changed my life completely. It's not that I set a boundary for you. I set a boundary for me not to allow you.
Wow. So basically, what you're saying is, I am responsible of me, right?
Yes. Yes.
So I am the one who need to take control of my life. And I'm gonna add a little bit that I learned a long time ago in this book that we were talking prior to start recording. Is what I'm responsible for: my feelings, my choices, my actions, my values. Right? I think that's the core framework of one to be able to say, I am responsible of me. You can say something to me today that can hurt me, but it's going to hurt me as much as I let it to. I can disregard it. I can ignore it. And that's what people forget. I remember the story. I don't know if you hear the story about the tiger, the donkey, and the lion. Have you heard that story?
No.
All right. I got to tell you a story real quick, and then we get back to boundaries, right?
Okay.
Years back, the donkey was talking to the tiger, and they got into an argument of the grass. And the donkey said the grass is blue. And the tiger was like, I'm just a little crazy. The grass is green. You don't know what you're talking about. Donkey being donkey, he stays on his line that the grass is blue, but also is very aggressive and says, well, let's go and talk to the king of the jungle. He's going to solve the problem because Mr. Tiger, you have no idea what you're talking about. So they go in front of the lion. Lion is busy, waits for them, gives them the time. Long story short, they present their case, they plead their case, and the lion looks at the donkey and says, you're absolutely right. Grass is blue. And for that, tiger, you're going to be punished of a year of silence. So the donkey goes in his merry way, jumping so happy, the grass is blue, blah, blah, blah. And the tiger really upset says, Your Majesty, you know well the grass is green. And the lion looks at him and says, well, I'm not giving you this type of punishment because you were wrong. I'm giving you the punishment because you argue with a donkey. Right? So that's how important is how we let others define our boundaries. I think that's what it changes, the way that you say it. I'm responsible of me. But
Exactly.
when I do that, what do I get, Sandra? I mean, in your experience, if I am responsible of me and I say about boundaries, what is the result? What do I get? What do you think I get if I do that?
Most importantly, boundaries. Remember, everybody remember these boundaries are for you. They're not for others because you cannot control the other person. The only person you can control is you. So when we say, I am going to create a boundary and I am expecting you to respect that boundary, that doesn't have to do with me. I am creating an expectation that I am putting on you. And you might not even understand it. You might not even know it. You might not even care. But when I'm responsible for me and I say, I will not allow Miguel to trespass this or to talk to me like this, it is me putting a boundary on you. So that means, for example, if you come over and you are like in which you never are, but let's put an example that you are in a vampire sucking energy mode, then I can say, Miguel, I am not willing to speak to you today. I am going to step back and then we can talk again tomorrow. Whatever you feel is your responsibility, but I am being responsible for my well being right now. When I was younger, I didn't understand boundaries like that. And I taught my son about boundaries. And then as he started to go older, I saw that he was really good at stepping a line, stepping a line, stepping a line. But I didn't understand why he was doing that. And I taught him to do that, but I didn't understand how that worked. However, he, in his immense wisdom, understood. And when he was older, he did that. And I told the psychiatrist, the therapist, he's doing that. And he said, he is drawing a boundary to protect himself from you. I was like, what? What? And he said,
Oh
and
my
she
God.
told me, boundaries are not for you. He's creating a healthy boundary for him that he will not tolerate this kind of behavior coming from you. Oh my God. He's the king of setting boundaries, but he's
That's
so
amazing.
clear about it that everybody understands because he's not just clear at setting the boundary, he's clear about communicating the boundary.
Which
Mm,
is very important, right? That is not just. I want to make sure that whomever is listening to this podcast today understands the power of that communication, the power of using a healthy no, a healthy that's enough, a healthy that's not my job, or that's not. I'm not responsible for that. How you teach him how to communicate that well?
because he grew up with a mother that was always a coach. However, even though I didn't understand about that way of setting the boundary, I did understand what was not tolerable and how to communicate it. Because one day he came home from school crying. He was a small boy. And he told me, oh, the teacher told me that I'm stupid and that I don't understand. It's so hard. I was like, what? I said, okay, tomorrow when she does that, you're going to draw a line. And you're going to tell the teacher that it's not that you're stupid, it's that she doesn't know how to teach to an 8-year-old and a class what should be happening, and that a person that's calling you stupid at that age has problem. And he did do that. And the teacher never thought that he would stand up for himself and draw a boundary. And nobody nada happened. He didn't get a message from the school principal. Nothing happened, and the teacher changed immensely towards him. And that's when he started to understand that he's not responsible for what other people does, but he's responsible for how he protects himself against those people. And that is something super important that we need to learn, because we are we were taught, your generation and my generation, and maybe a little bit younger, that we were supposed to respect our elder, and that we were supposed to not express our opinion, and that we were never supposed to say no and never supposed to draw a line. However, that is not true, because if we are supposed to take care of ourselves first, right? If we're supposed to take care of ourselves first, we're supposed to understand how to protect ourselves first. That
And
means that we take full responsibility of what we allow, of what we don't allow, of what we say, and how we react to what other people tell us.
how about love? Meaning, if I love somebody and I create boundaries, now let's reverse it. And I do not create boundaries, right? I love you so much. You're a dear friend. I want to let you do whatever. I don't set up boundaries. What could have happened? Would that create resentment? That would create a better relationship? What do you think the love without boundaries will do?
Love without boundaries will turn toxic, because then all the expectations are crazy, because that means that whatever I do is allowed by you, or whatever you do is allowed by me. And we need to understand that we have certain expectations, or certain, I don't want to even say tolerate, because that's not a word. We should never tolerate. But for example, at this time in my life, at my very young 61 years old, I would never come to a relationship without boundaries. What? Because imagine, if you go into a relationship, or you're a father, and then we tend to misinterpret unconditional love, then that's when we love our children unconditionally. It's not that it's conditional, but if you're going to give them uh, a carta blanca, that means carte blanche, and allow them to do whatever they want to do, is it acceptable for you that they go out and they destroy your car over and over? Is it acceptable for you that they take your American Express and they max it out over and over? Is it acceptable for you that they come into the house, that your beautiful, pristine house, and they bring friends and they leave a mess, and that's okay over and over? Those are boundaries.
What also is unbelievably evident in the business world is how managers and senior executives, when they love their teams, when they love their company, they fall into the no boundary and they destroy the company.
Absolutely.
They let the people run the company and do whatever they want, right? And that's beyond my understanding. Growing up, I learned also another lesson that from a very, very, very smart man out of the Rome culture, Marcus Aurelius, that he say, you cannot put the interest of the bee before the hive, right? So I see that in business, and because you were talking about kids and personal relationships, because I asked for it, but as you were giving me your answer and opinions, I started to think more about, okay, this really impacts the business world and how we also treat our clients. How many times you see in our world with the real estate agents allowing their clients running their business, and they don't say because they fear to lose the client, right? And then they feel drained, they feel burned out, they feel abused, disrespected, frustrated. I think those are kind of the indicators that one can, write down and say, "Oh, I'm feeling this way. I need to set up boundaries with my my clients, which in my opinion will create better relationships, right? It will increase the
Exactly.
respect, will reduce drama. We're talking about drama before we started, right? And they
Yes.
will build and we will build trust. But how can you control what you cannot control?
Well, because you also, our head coach the other day in an event said, if you have a client that has unrealistic expectations about a service, and they're not, and whatever you say doesn't make them change their mind, you have the option of not working with that client, because it'll just take your marketing dollar, your reputation, your time, and you will not be able to make the sale. I in not in any situation, we shouldn't allow anybody to disrespect us, step all over us, and become energy sucking vampires on our lives. I have clients that say, I have to be walking on eggshells around this client, or if you're overthinking a situation with a client or it makes you anxious, ask yourself, what boundary have you drawn around that client? You know, Dr. Amen, the brain doctor, Daniel Amen. I was reading a book with Dr. Amen, and he was saying that he had a client that was mean to him, and that was overly emotional, and it gave him so much anxiety. And he said that the day before the client, he was feeling so much anxiety. He even said that he would even shower with the client because he was overly thinking about that client and how much anxiety it created. A demanding client, a mean client, or a client that has unrealistic expectations, until he decided to tell the client, thank you, but no thank you. I cannot um, be your therapist anymore.
Which is the consequence of the boundary, right?
Which
Because
is,
I
he
read
created a boundary for himself, not for the client.
correct, and it's a consequence, which I read that a boundary without a consequence is just a suggestion,
There you go.
right? So, because that's what you going back to what you were saying earlier, a few minutes back. It is okay if you don't, you're not allowed to do this, but we allow it because we don't have a clear boundary. The consequence has to be a withdrawal, a change, penalty, something when the other person doesn't allow, which is very uncomfortable, right? So, can we say that discomfort is part of a boundary process
Absolutely.
and a growth?
Totally. Because when we are used to not setting boundaries, we will feel guilt, or we will have a guilty feeling of, "Ah, I just did this." But it's not about guilt. It's about self respect and self responsibility. That doesn't mean you have to be disrespectful or mean when setting a boundary. You can do it with kindness and humbleness, and with grace, but you're still setting a boundary. And the other person will try to break the boundary. But it's also super important that you, as the boundary setter, don't say, I'm super sorry, Miguel, because I had to set a boundary.
Never apologize for set up a
Why
boundary.
are you apologizing for protecting yourself?
That's beyond my understanding. Yes, it shouldn't
So
be.
that, exactly. But that is the same thing. If you have an employee that's not working, that's resistant, because an employee that's not working or that's resistant will definitely turn on you. And if you allow that behavior because you're afraid of the consequences, then you're not setting a boundary. And then that employee, when you have, as a leader, when you accept unacceptable behavior or underperforming behavior from a team, they will see that you have that weakness, and then you over empower them. And then it's almost, that creates a really toxic relationship. And that's not leadership at all. Over empowering is not leadership. Not setting boundaries is not leadership. Having to tolerate underperformance is not leadership. And if
Yeah,
an
it's not.
employee kidnaps you in terms of, oh, I am underperforming, but you have to be okay with it because I am not willing to tolerate anything from you because you told me that I was part of this family or you were my friend. That's what, when we're running businesses, our team is not our family and our team are not our friends.
And it should be treated as a family in a way that I look at it, meaning I want the best for them. And sometimes being part of the team is not the best for them. You need to coach them out and help them to find a better place with your standards and never lower the standards, never lower the bar to meet them because you're not leading, right? And what I said, and I saw your face, yeah, but it's a family. I think it is a different type of a family if you are respectful, if you love them, therefore you want the best for them, and you also understand that they might not be, part of the family or good suited for that family. Yeah, or not part of it because they're not belong and they don't have the same values that you have, right? I think we were up to something, and we started talking about this today prior to recording because we started with the family topic, and I was talking about my family and how we at times need to create some distance to protect ourselves. But then guilt kicks in, right? I'm an awful person. How I'm not talking to so and so. How I'm not close to my nephew, my niece, my cousin, my brother, my sister, my mom, whatever it is. But we need to really look into it, and at times we create more harm than help by staying close and not setting up the boundary because we're not even helping them, right? What I hear
Ex-
about your son, 8 years old, that he developed an amazing skill to protect himself from whatever life throws out to him. That to me create limits, identity, and peace. And that's what all was all about. How can we have a better tomorrow, not just in a personal life, but in business, by having that discomfort or living through the discomfort of the boundary remedy of the illness of the lack of boundaries, right? That we bring into our lives.
but I think it's all when you cannot want something for someone if they don't want it for themselves. And that's one of the problems that we have when we're being a leader in a team. We can definitely coach them up, but there also has to be a point where somebody that doesn't want to be coached up, they're not going to be coached up, and then that's where resistance hits, right? And then that's when you have to set a boundary. That's super important. And in terms of us, it's about self-confidence. It's about self-confidence and self-control. And we know when something is wrong, you feel it in your body. Your body and your instinct are the first red flags that you will experience. When something doesn't feel right, you feel it in your body. Maybe because it's a feeling that you have stored, maybe because it goes against you and against your personal standards and your personal expectations, but you definitely feel it in the body. So it's important to stop and to listen to yourself. You don't have to stop and listen to yourself for an hour. You need to stop and listen for yourself for a little bit and understand, why is that feeling being triggered, or how does it feel? And then you can always have the opportunity to reframe. How does this situation make me feel? How would I work through this situation differently? And what is the answer that I should give? Sometimes when you're feeling triggered, the best answer is no answer. And then you can come back with an answer later. You can always say, I cannot speak about this right now. We can resume at another moment.
How powerful
And
is that, Sandra?
that
It is
protects.
super powerful. It protects you, right?
Remember, remember that the longest sentence there exists is no.
In silence.
So,
I
no.
I agree. Yes, and I learned a lot today, but let's highlight it as we close. What I learned was I am responsible of me, my feelings, my choices, my actions, my values. It's nobody else's responsibility. And to protect it, I need to set up boundaries. So how, and with that we close, how one can start setting up boundaries today. What would you coach me on if I ask you, Sandra, I want to set up the boundary process today? How do I do that?
Let's suppose that don't, you're not in touch with yourself and you don't have this self-confidence situation. Let's start working on boundaries, listening to your body, because you're like the book says, your body keeps the score and your body is wise. So whenever, a really good way to start setting a boundary is to stop reacting. And whenever you're feeling an emotion in your body that is signaling some kind of alert in the pit of your stomach, in your throat, it brings like a bad feeling, because it does. Like, I know that it's crazy what I'm gonna say, but it's like you have the feelings. If you have tightness in your legs, that's because it's the result of a long time of holding up a lot of emotions, cortisol and adrenaline. But from your navel, from in between your legs and up to your, maybe here, and sometimes in the top of your head, if you're very um if you're working with yourself a lot, you will feel it somewhere in your head. But if you're working this primary, you will feel it in your throat, in your chest, in the pit of your stomach, or in your navel, or in between your legs. That's where you will feel the uncomfort. So whenever you feel some kind of discomfort, anxiety, fear, or something that doesn't tie with you, then just stop. Don't answer. Don't do anything. Stop and listen to yourself. What is that feeling telling you? Instead of reacting, stop. That's the very first sign of self-love that you can have, instead of reacting, punching, and saying something back that you might regret. And that is a very important way of starting to protect yourself. Stop and listen to yourself. You are totally entitled to say, give me a minute. I can't talk about this right now. And that is a boundary.
That's how you start to set them up, Sandra. Thank you so much. What a great episode we have today. I
Yes.
think people will benefit a lot from it because it is real, it is here. People feel frustrated, will let others abuse them. That applies to everything. A boundary system or a boundary, lack of boundaries affects everything, right? So leadership, sales teams, marriage, high performance, you name it. It is
Parent.
out there because we don't know how to set up those boundaries and we let others do and say whatever they want to say, regardless of what position you're in. So good today. I hope people will make the most out of it, and I will see you next time. Until
And I
then,
will see
Sandra,
you
thank you
next
so
time,
much.
Miguel. So thank you so much, and see you soon. And I would love to know, how are you feeling if you're listening to us every time that you learn to take a step back and say, give me a minute. I cannot talk about this right.
Amazing. Thank you, Sandra. Bye
Thank
bye.
you, Miguel.